a playlist original.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 90 of Back to the Blockbuster with your hosts, Gaius and Jackson. Special anniversary episode, but I started it with episode 90 because we are 10 away from 100 episodes,
A big
and
milestone coming up.
we just want to count that down in a real way because we have some stuff that we're gonna planning to do for it that we're gonna keep you guys in the loop for. This is not gonna be like a new show this episode by any means, but it is episode 90, and we did want to mention it because we wanted to wait till we got to that number to kind of count down to the big event, at least a big event for us and those who listen to us. So it's a big event for this crowd. And but yeah, so that'll be happening very soon, and it's cool that we can kind of kick off that countdown with look back and anniversary at a movie that I grew up with, has been in my life since childhood. It's a little movie called The Sandlot, released on April 7th, 1993, having its own little milestone moment in April. And we were like, hey, we want to talk about it. I didn't know. So I told Jackson, I was like, hey, before, like look at the anniversary list. So like you can pick stuff that you want to cover. And now that you have good taste. So I'm not surprised. People that I know that love The Sandlot are usually like people like my age that grew up with it. I don't think I've ever really talked to anyone younger who was like, oh yeah, I love that movie. So I was surprised when you were like, oh yeah, definitely want to do that one. I was like, oh, well, perfect, because I love that movie too. And it'll be interesting to kind of see what it's like having viewed it during different generations, I guess. Like, like I saw it when it came out. I saw it when it came out in 93 when I was a kid, and it just has been, like I said, in my life ever since then. It's also a reflection of a time that I don't think kids today really appreciate anymore.
I was feeling the same thing when watching it today. It's a great point.
Kids are very much tied to social media and technology and video games, and this movie at its core is all about going outside and spending time with your friends and being active. There's more to it than that, but they're like, that is at the heart of it. And kids don't really do that a lot anymore. Not in the way that it's really depicted here. I remember when I showed this movie to my brother, he felt like, he liked it, but definitely didn't like it as much as like, I guess it's different when like, he grew up in an age where it's like, video games. So it's, it's definitely a different time. And like,
radically different.
Yeah,
radically different. The way you put it and comparing it to like modern day youth and how drastically different their upbringing and where they put their time and attention is, how it's depicted in this movie is so poignant. I hadn't even, foolishly enough, hadn't even even considered that, but it is like kind of depressing to think about how far we've come from what is such a healthy lifestyle, and how kids, this is like the quintessential way that, like, even though I'm from the generation that we didn't have, like, we had screens and stuff and video games were coming around when I was in my youth, but it was by no means as prominent as it is now. This was very much reminiscent of like what my childhood was like growing up. Granted, probably a few more screens involved. We had a nice balance. And I'd say like I'm at that cutoff where now I don't feel like a lot of kids would have this kind of growing up. Maybe that's not to say none will, but definitely not as commonplace.
Well, some of you guys, if you want to feel old, this movie's 30 years old. It's crazy that it is. But what I got from watching it yesterday, as of this recording, I watched it yesterday to have it fresh in my brain. It, like any good timeless movie, it still holds up really well. And it's probably one of the best coming of age movies I can really, think of on the top of my head.
For sure.
Also a solid sports movie too. I mean, like, especially for like young kids, who probably grew up playing like baseball and different sports like with their friends in the neighborhood. Like I said, Jackson did, like, a much different time than it is now. The best thing I can say about it even today is that its heart is firmly in the right place. Like, it's a very like that is the biggest compliment I can give it.
Full of heart.
Yeah, it's full of heart and nostalgia. And it's still, even all these years later, still strikes a chord with me. It's just really well done. I'm pretty sure someone in this group of ragtag kids, like, you knew someone like this maybe growing up. There's someone in that group that you can like identify with, or maybe you identify with yourself as a kid. in this group. But yeah, I mean, that was like from this rewatch. That's what I took from it. I was like, "How this still like 30 years later still holds up really well." And I think some people don't really necessarily love wholesome and like sweet, but like I think this is okay for this. Like I love that it's like wholesome and has a good message and like yeah, it tugs at the heartstrings in all the right places. Like it's really and it's funny on top of that too.
Absolutely. I'm with it. There's really nothing. I was just because I watched it the day of, like just a couple hours ago before we filmed episode 89. And I gotta say, there was nothing that detracted from this movie for me. I mean, I'd say maybe some casual viewers may say that it has shown its age in the 30 years. But I mean, I don't think that detracts from the movie, at least not for me in any case. It's also it kind of has the benefit of portraying an earlier time period. It's set in 1962, so like you can give some points to that. It does like a wonderful job set wise portraying 1960s small town America. Doesn't really doesn't command much. It's like you get for the most part it's take place on the Sandlot, this old kind of battered up baseball field in the local town. But you get like the costumes and some vehicles and some sets like definitely pay homage to that time in American history and to very great effect. But yeah, it was a nice, wholesome, nostalgic watch for sure. One thing I gotta say for me, it was I had grown up with this movie. This movie had been out for 5 years by the time I came around, so it was I don't remember when I would have seen this movie for the first time. Clearly, my parents had this one around. I remember having a VHS of this movie as a young kid, so I can't even really tell you how many times I'd seen it. But it was one of those movies that I was so far removed from, which is why I was so enthusiastic about covering it because it's like this was a movie that was very important in my childhood growing up, and I had played baseball from around the time that I had was able to comprehend movies. Like these two things go back just as far for me, but it had been something that I probably hadn't watched since I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. So it was an interesting watch in the sense that I remembered most of what happened, but it was that childhood innocence and how I remembered this movie was so different watching it now as an adult that okay, this scene doesn't exactly play out how I thought it. The beast was not as terrifying as it used to be when I was 7 years old. So it kind of felt like a moment. I was like, hey, I've grown up since I've last seen this, and it was kind of sad. I'm not gonna lie, it was different. But in terms of the movie, it held up, like you said, amazingly well. That's not to say that the movie doesn't hold that spark like it used to. It was just so radically different watching it now. It's been probably 17, 16 years since I'd seen this last. So it was an interesting watch, and I'm glad that we're talking about it today.
Cool revisit for you. That has been
very
like
much so
since you've seen it.
Very long time.
I can't even count how many times I've seen it because I've seen it so much.
That's awesome.
It is like almost a yearly watch, I think. Like I find the reason it's like a comfort movie. It really is like a comfort movie. It's like one of those things where it's like just throwing it on and like I can work and like have it on. It's like not like it's like horrible background noise, but I know it so well that it's just one of those things that like I know what I'm gonna get when I'm watching it, and it's always been like that for me. I actually saw this in theaters. I can't really remember the whole experience of seeing it in theaters.
You'd have been like 9 or something, right?
Yeah. So like, but I do remember going. My mom taking me to see it.
Now that I'm jealous of.
But my love for the movie actually, and I think for a lot of people, because this movie made like $32 million when it came out on a $7 million budget, did decent business, but this movie became huge on home video. That is when it completely broke out as a cult classic. So like my memories of it have come from like owning it at home and being able to watch it whenever I wanted to watch it.
Yes.
And that is kind of where my stuff starts with the Sandlot.
Okay.
And it's crazy. I mean, like it's so funny too. Like I just talked about it being a comfort movie. Like it's like movies. It's this, and then sometimes it's like The Lost Boys, which are completely like different movies, right?
But, so like, different, but spiritually similar.
Similar, right?
Of The Lost Boys.
But I think watching it as a kid, what I really enjoyed was like I remember as a kid watching it being like, I want to like hang out with other kids like this. Like I like that looks like a fun group to be around.
Absolutely.
Even though I think a lot of people can relate to Smalls because like a lot of people know what it's like to kind of like almost be like fish on the water. You don't really know anyone, and then you have to make friends. Like new kid in town, like that is hard for a lot of people. And you also are trying to find your way and find people to hang out with, even if you're not new to a town. Like I think just finding like your tribe or your group when you're younger is pretty kind of can be hard to navigate sometimes. And I think
Absolutely.
that's instantly relatable. Like, I think out of all of them, he's probably the most relatable because it's like, yeah, we've all been there in
Hmm.
some degree. But it really does, as a child, it really makes you feel like I would have loved to have met a group of kids like this and had this like crazy fun summer
Hmm.
meeting these people for the first time. Uh, that still kind of sticks with me though, even as an adult. It's like it's so like you don't really like. That's why I love coming of age movies, because I think no matter how old you get, you still remember that little piece of like what makes it special, and that's why, I mean, because you've lived it before, like
Exactly.
coming of age movies about high school. You've been in that experience before, you've dealt with it before. That's why sometimes they can hit you in the feels a little bit harder than like some other stories, or
Mm.
whatever like the situation is that is relatable to you. I think that is why these movies work, and I think that's why this movie especially works, because it's so easy to identify with. And yeah, man, I when I was makes me feel like a kid again when I watch it. Like that's why I was like,
That
when
is,
I was
it did take me back to childhood. I was like, damn, this is very much what it was like living in a small town. I
yeah,
happen to have grown up playing baseball, so a lot of that hits home for me. It was very, very relatable. Like you said, like coming of age movies are so good at doing is taking you back to these universal experiences that many people can relate to and putting you back into how you felt when you were going through something similar. And
right.
it's definitely a feeling that I love about the movies that can have this effect on you. And The Sandlot very much brought that back out in me, which I really appreciated it. But I gotta ask, did you play any sports in general, or did you ever play baseball, or did you have a love for
So
baseball?
I didn't, I didn't grow up playing sports. I always knew what I wanted to do, like as far as like movie shit. I was always into that, and like in the
Okay, yeah,
writing and all that
that's
stuff.
awesome.
I had a lot of friends that played sports. I like sports. I don't especially love baseball. I like going to games. I don't like watching it on TV.
I don't even
Um,
watch it on TV, and I've played my whole life, so I
right.
don't blame you.
But it's interesting though. Like I have a strange affinity though for sports movies. I don't know what it
Because
is.
they're
Like
awesome. Like,
because I didn't grow up playing football, but I love Friday Night Lights. So I don't understand like where that like
right.
comes from. But like, I mean, I think it's just like the heart of it, I guess. Like anyone that's really dedicated to sports. I mean, I can see that, even if I don't play, I can see like
Yep.
how much dedication it takes to do it. And and can also can see like the whole team camaraderie thing that kind of comes from it as well,
Yes,
because that also is just relatable to like anything in life, I think.
certainly.
But yeah, it is interesting. Like when you said that you grew up playing baseball and stuff, like it's coming at the movie from a perspective of like, yeah, I didn't grow up playing sports, so I was like, I don't know how I just
You don't need to have to appreciate the Sandlot because there's just
like
something in there that is just so wholesome and universal that you get what it's trying to say.
right, exactly. So I
And
mean, yeah, I agree with that, and I think that's what someone like me kind of gravitates towards in a movie like this. And but yeah, I funny because I did have a ton of friends who did grow up playing baseball around the time that this movie was popular when it came out, and like in subsequent years, and they definitely. I mean, I don't know people that love the movie, but like people who also grew up playing baseball have a very different love and appreciation for the movie too, though, because they've
right,
actually experienced this in a real way, where they would like play with their friends like this on a regular basis before they
right.
even got involved in like actual team sports when they went to school. Like they were actually doing this like in their neighborhoods with their friends just for fun,
That's how they spent the
and
summer. Yeah,
that's how they spent their summer. So like they identify with the movie in a much different way than I do, but I also appreciate where they're coming from though, as far as like why this movie means so much to them. Because honestly, dude, we've talked a lot about different movies that we love. I haven't met anyone, even though there's some reviews that I read that some people didn't like the movie. I've never met anyone that said that they didn't like it in some capacity. Maybe they might not like love it, but I've never heard anyone that I know personally go like, "No, I didn't really like the Sandlot."
what's not to
and
like, right?
yeah, and if I did, I don't know if I could be friends with them. So like, there be that.
We don't see eye to eye on this movie, so we're not friends.
We're not friends.
No, it's definitely a pivotal coming of age. I hesitate to use the word kids movie. I guess it is in the sense that it's from the perspective of kids and
Yeah,
it involves kids like literally in every scene, but it doesn't feel that way either. It's
yeah,
weird. It kind of rides the line. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you take from like when you were watching it again, like all these years later? At the start of the movie, like kind of take you back a bit, or were you like, feel new
It
again?
it felt well, it very much felt new just by nature of how many years I had let go by. It's weird. I remember watching and there were many times where I caught myself being like, this is not quite how I remembered it. I also, it's interesting to see like how your mind works, or to remember rather how your mind works as a kid, because that I was a
Yeah.
kid the last time I'd seen this movie. And I remember not having any idea, like when I was just watching it a few hours ago, wouldn't have been able to tell you that this was set in the 1960s. I don't think my kid brain would have even acknowledged
You
that.
did that, yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh, the cars look a little bit different for that. Other than that, and they dress a little bit differently. But other than that, I guess my kid brain just would not have noticed or cared about these details. So, like, the fact that it's in the 60s, like, oh, I do not remember this being such a part of the plot, but really found it made a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
some things came back to me when I was watching it. A lot of scenes just hit home to see again, like the scene at the pool where what's the character? Is it Specs or
Is it?
is it Specs? Yeah,
Oh,
where he
I think, yeah.
fakes a drowning and gets the
Yeah.
lifeguard to give him mouth to mouth. Like that scene
Yeah.
was like so iconic, and coming back to watch that, I was like, oh my god, like took me right back to watching this on the VCR when I was just a youngin'.
Your
Like,
youth.
you're killing me, Smalls. That's been like a thing from this movie that has carried on in the pop culture, which is great. I see a lot of memes of that character in
We
that
still
phrase.
use it. We still use it. Like
Exactly. So
when
it's
someone
cool to see
disappoints you,
where
that's why you
this
say.
exactly. So it's cool in that little space that this movie has definitely kind of carried on and found life in this new modern world. So it was cool to see where that come from again. The whole plot of the beast, this big junkyard dog behind the fence that eats all the home run balls, was just such a great aspect of that movie that I just remember like as a kid, that is totally probably the scariest thing. Like the antagonist of your summer is this
Yeah.
huge dog that's eating your baseballs. And like that is just such a lovable aspect of this movie that I found myself really
It
appreciating upon
really
rewatch.
it really is too, because like when you're a kid and you're watching it, it is something that is a little like, well, that's a little terrifying because that's how you would think of it as a child, right? But then when you watch it when
Yes.
you're getting older, like it's so creative because like a child's imagination would make that situation far more terrifying than it actually is, right? So that's why I
Yes.
love that
And
still
I
even in
experienced that
yeah,
firsthand today.
even in that moment, like it comes from like such a pure innocent place, like where these kids are like they've made this thing so much bigger than what it actually is. But that is what you would do when you're a kid, especially if it's something you don't really see, right? Like this is like your imagination, it will run wild and turn a docile dog into like the worst thing ever.
Exactly.
Like
This big animatronic monster that rattles
yeah,
the
yeah,
fence.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that watching it as you get when you get older. Like, yeah, of course. Like when you're a kid, like you let your imagination like run wild. And, like again, that goes
Yeah.
along with the whole like childlike innocence of the movie itself, though. Like it's so easy to identify with, and
Exactly.
like
It was I hadn't had a movie watching experience like this. I don't know. Maybe probably I'll say in a long time. I don't know about if ever, but where I had been so far removed. Like the last time I'd seen this was when I was an innocent kid, and now to just I've gone through so like life since I'm now looking at this movie in a completely different light. It was say just very profound. I'm still like I found myself thinking about it even when we were recording our last episode about like how this movie made me feel. It was just so different, which I'd say like I'd recommend to anybody that hasn't seen it in a long time that maybe wouldn't have thought about revisiting it, that has seen it as a kid, or if you're just a baseball fan in general, like go check out The Sandlot. There's a reason that it is one of those like seminal baseball movies.
yeah, I agree. So we did try to talk about like it's interesting because today's today's youth spends more time
Yes.
like behind screens and stuff. But I think it's interesting too. Like when they first moved, like his mom like here now and like encourages him to go out and make friends, even though he rather kind of stay in his room and play with his erector set. He doesn't really want to try to like make friends, so he has to be pushed and like do it. What I've always loved about the movie, still, I love this central friendship between Smalls and Benny, because it's
Yes.
like this whole idea of like this cooler kid kind of like taking you under his wing, like we're gonna make sure like you're gonna have a really great fucking summer, like
Right.
maybe
You're
you
gonna be
don't seem
included.
maybe
You're
you don't
part of the
seem that
team.
great at baseball right now. The fact that he goes
You'll
off
come
and
a
like
long way.
he'll come a long way and he like does it on his own, wants to learn to get better on his own. But I just love that central friendship between these two characters. I also love
Absolutely.
finding out that like the director David Mickey Evans, who's also the narrator for the movie,
Mm,
he actually had it's Tom Guiry, I don't want to mess who plays Smalls, and Mike Vitar. He had them actually hang out a few weeks prior to them actually shooting before
Right.
being around the other kids, or basically, so they would like build like a rapport. And the
Yes.
other, I guess the other kids, when they finally got on set and stuff and saw them interacting, they were surprised that they weren't friends before this. Like that's how
Right.
like close they had gotten, and apparently they are still very close friends today. So that
To this day.
also warms my little black heart that they're still that Smalls and Benny are still friends today.
I love
I
that this movie is able to do that. And I think all the cast members pretty much in agreement that like filming this movie during that summer was like one of the best summers of their lives. And I can't help but think, wow, that would have been such an awesome opportunity as a kid yourself to have gone away to film this baseball movie with a bunch of people that are going to become your lifelong friends, and
yeah.
just film a movie for the summer and playing baseball all the time. Like it doesn't get better than that as a kid, right?
Yeah, and they have all remained in touch. I mean that's, I think that's a cool thing about this too, is like sometimes when movies or TV shows get made, you want to believe that, like, especially when it's about friends, you want to be like, oh,
Right.
I hope they get along in real life. And then sometimes you learn like, nah, man, after the movie
Not
wrapped, they
always.
never talk to each other again.
Yeah.
But it just goes along with the whole like wholesome nature of the movie. Like
That's right.
these kids met on this film. They had like one of the best times of their lives in this film, and they maintained a relationship all these years later because they are bonded by this one special movie they got to make together. And
Mm-hmm.
this one special movie they got to make together has become a very special movie for so many other people that
Right.
watch it. And I think that's so cool that they are still like bonded by that. I mean, I feel like we're talking more about like the feelings of it.
Right.
That's what the movie does. I mean, like
It
it
has a
just
huge
feels,
weight to it. You
yeah,
can't talk about it without discussing like the feel to it
yeah,
and the feelings
especially,
that it evokes.
yeah, I agree. And then every child in this film gets a moment, gets like, they all have very fun characters. They all get to do something that's memorable in the movie.
Yes.
They all stand out, which is why I love, like, sometimes in an ensemble, like sometimes there might be one that's like, oh, I don't really remember what so and so did, but
Right.
every one of these guys gets a significant moment, which is nice. Which is
And,
funny about, yeah, I've actually met Marty York
oh,
like
cool.
4 years ago, no, 5 years
Nice.
ago, at a club in Hollywood. He looks very different now. He's like jacked. He's like ripped. Like
Okay.
he's,
Fair enough.
yeah, face is still like kind of the same. So like,
Okay.
and I was like with friends, like, should we go up to him? She's like, no.
So you
Like, oh, I love,
recognize him. That's
yeah,
pretty
recognize
impressive.
him. Yeah. And I was like, he could tell me to kick rocks or like whatever. And I went over to him and I said hi, and I just told him how much I really love the Sandlot. And he was very nice and very like, you could tell he's not annoyed, like, oh, you recognize me from that. I mean, it's like,
Right.
it was, they tell you, I mean, he's not like my hero, but they tell you not to beat your heroes, people that you're like, oh, I like,
Yeah.
because you don't want them to disappoint you.
Exactly.
But
That's nice that he didn't.
he talked very fondly, like shortly, about like his experience with it, and like he was just happy that people still talk about it all these years later.
I can't
So
help but
yeah,
feel like that would be a good feeling as an actor to be recognized about, especially a property, something that you'd worked on as young as he had. Like that's kind of
yeah.
pretty cool and
So,
impressive of you to recognize him and go up and speak to him. That's
well, you
awesome.
know what? Some people reject it. Like, Alfonso Barrero for a little bit, like from the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. He doesn't love being called Carlton or being remembered as Carlton from Fresh Prince of
Okay.
Bel Air.
Yeah.
But it's like, we didn't know who you were without that. So like,
Kind of sign up for that.
embrace being Carlton, bro.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it seems like everyone involved in this, like, they have no issue being involved in it. And I always, Denis Leary plays his father. I think it's interesting because Denis Leary known in like a lot of circles for his comedy, and he can be a little abrasive sometimes.
Okay.
I love him in this because it's such a nice, like, quiet, very like,
Subdued
subdued.
role.
Like, you want this guy to be your dad. Like
Right.
very like, yeah, he's a very like likable performance in this. It's just funny just knowing what he does outside of like this movie, like
See,
his
I recognize his
brand.
name, but I couldn't think of what else he had done. Now that you mentioned comedy, that kind of rings a bell, but I can't think of any of his other works. But it's like I know this guy has done other stuff, but I didn't quite know.
Yeah, and then like also always get thrown off when I forget that Marley Shelton is Wendy Peppercorn. Like, I forget that's her, and because Marley Shelton went on to have, had a pretty decent career like
Oh,
later. Like, Marley Shelton ended up like,
anything you think I'd know? I'm not sure.
yeah, she's in Grindhouse.
Oh, which?
She's in the Planetary one. She's the doctor with the,
Oh, okay.
like, or the nurse, whatever. Like, these are my like friends. This one makes like that one.
Yes.
She's in that.
Oh,
She's in Never Been Kissed. She's in Pleasantville. She's also what you would recognize her more from. She's in Scream 4 and 5. She's the blonde, the cop, Judy Hicks.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Nice.
she actually has gone on to have like a pretty big career post the Sandlot. But I always forget
I'd
that
say,
that's
yeah.
her. That's her. I always forget it's
Wow.
her. But yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Like a lot of the and then a lot of these guys, of course, have I recognize them. Like it's funny because Squints and I think his name is Chauncey Leopardi and I forget why. Oh, and Patrick Renna actually, who plays Ham. They are in another sports movie together called The Big Green, which is about soccer. It came out a few years after this movie. Not as popular as The Sandlot, but
Okay.
worthy of a look because it has the same like kind of wholesome
Vibe.
kind of vibe, but with soccer. It just never took off the way that like The Sandlot did. But I think it's just funny that those two guys are in that
Yeah,
movie together as
certainly.
well.
I love when actors in a movie like this link up and work on other stuff together in the future because I'm sure it must just be cool to see on set again and be like, oh, hey, like it's been a while. Like we
Yeah,
filmed this together. Like I always like look out for when that happens with actors. It's kind of cool when
yeah.
that happened for them.
What were some of your like standout moments or scenes like from this rewatch? And then did they come to you like when you were watching it? You're like, oh, I kind of remember this, or was it like, oh shit, like you said, like this played out a little differently than I thought it.
A lot of instances with the beast were very different than how I remember because like as a kid, I'm very much probably in the same mindset as the kids are when they're
Yeah,
encountering it. Oh, a long time without seeing the dog, or you get glimpses or a shadow here, and it's a big animatronic until they actually decide to show the actual dog.
yeah,
So those kind of came back a little bit differently, but I would remember like the layout of the sequence, but the whole sequence when they are experimenting on how to get Smalls' dad's Babe Ruth signed
both.
ball back.
Yeah, yeah,
That came back to me like just it was like just like watching it back when I was a kid. That was an awesome little scene to watch. Like all the different ways that they experiment and have it all blow up in their face. But it was so funny how the dogs like launching all their equipment back over the fence at them
yeah,
and it's all destroyed. It was interesting to like just not be like scared of the dog anymore. I remember just being like, oh my God, it's such a monster. And it like really just wasn't as intimidating as I had remembered as a kid, but can definitely see why it came across that way. One of my favorite moments is definitely when Benny grabs the ball and leaps the fence, and then the
yeah,
beast jumps back over it and
yeah,
chases him kind of around town.
yeah.
That was a neat sequence for sure. Definitely iconic. And James Earl Jones being in it, I remember that he was played the beast like the owner. I can't remember his character's name, Mr.
Oh,
Myrtle.
it's real. Yeah,
Yes, that was just awesome to see him again on that, and like when he's introduced and invites him into the house and he replaces the chewed up ball for the Yankees signed autograph ball. Like that was
yeah,
a really special sequence. A lot of the wouldn't have remembered a lot of like the actual like real time baseball mentions of like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and all that stuff. So to like
yeah,
experience that again was super cool because these are some names that I know just having like played ball and have some buddies. I'm by no means like a huge baseball enthusiast or anything. I've played for most of my life and I love the game, but like I said earlier, I don't like watch it professionally or anything, but it was still really cool to just kind of get a little taste of that
yeah,
because it was such a big thing back then. It was like such an American tradition and so sacred down
yeah.
there. So it was just cool to kind of be back in a framework in a movie that is definitely made by a baseball lover. It was just has a charisma to it. So gleaned a lot of that when I was watching this again
Yeah.
today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool that you can actually see it from that perspective too. Like you could tell that it was written and done by someone that loves
Loves
the game and knows the
especially
sport.
the
Yeah,
greats. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
What about you? So you've seen it a bunch of times. Is there
Yeah.
still a tried and true favorite scene for yourself, or are there many that
You
you
know what?
enjoy?
It's weird. Like it's the movie to me is like always like a series of moments. Like I love a lot of the movie, but it's more about like just watching all of them interact and more than having like the like favorite moment. But
Right.
I remember it struck me again watching it too. It's like when Benny like hits like the cover off the ball, like that's when he like basically they think it's amazing, right? And
Yeah.
he like again, like I love that the way they write that character that he's bummed that they won't get to play. And like it's
Right.
just like and like that I mean, as an adult, I'm like, oh, it sucks for you for him because like that's what he's not taking. Like I did something really cool, like whatever. Like
Yeah.
he's like, like what are we're not going to be able to do this thing that we love to do anymore.
Exactly.
Um, and I do love the sequence of events after that because I mean, Smalls is like, all right, I'm gonna get like
Oh, I
autograph.
got a ball. Yeah.
I got a ball. Like, and it's such like, again, from like a childlike place, because it's like, oh, like, even as a kid, you're like, this is not going to end well
No.
at all. But it's, I also loving though is that like they all kind of come together like to kind of try to retrieve it. Like
Right.
it's like
They're
at
still
the end of
working
the
as a
day,
team.
yeah. At the end of the day, this is more about like, yeah, baseball and all that brought them together, whatever. But like, it's this kind of friendship and bond that they now had with this one kid that they thought they wouldn't have that kind of bond with, because like, it's not initially a great meeting when he gets
He throws
involved
the
with
ball
it.
for the.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're just like, oh God, no, like this is not gonna
That
go
was a
over
moment
well.
at home because I can just like remember being in like a spot like that or like seeing that for myself. It's like, oh, you just feel for him so badly.
Yeah, and God, yeah, it's just so true. And but I do love that he takes the time to learn though. Like that's like the cool part about it, and because he wants to like get better, he wants to hang out with them. Like that part is like she was like, go Smalls, do it.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
like root. He's an easy character to root for.
Exactly. And on that note, I got to get back to Benny for a sec because even though it's very much the movie is Smalls' story, he's narrating. It's about him being the new kid in town and making the friends and joining the team and all that. But like Benny is very much the heart of this story, right? The unsung
Yeah,
hero, if you will.
right.
Him and definitely and Ham as well. He's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
great presence. I'd say he'd be like the next guy in line. He is like the other biggest screen presence, but I can't help but feel like Benny is almost like a main character in this story too. You know what I mean? And
Well,
I love it.
I agree. He is, and and I think too, because you find out. I mean, they all love playing the sport, but you can tell he's different from them. It's he's passionate about it, and you can tell that
Yes.
very early on. At of course, he does end up going on to be destined for great things. But like,
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think it's very much his story too. They kind of run like parallel, and I think they both kind of learn from each other in like a
Right.
really significant way. It's a really well written, like those two in general are well written friendship, and to kind of
Absolutely.
watch its beginnings and then what it kind of becomes. And probably the benefit of having those kids hang out prior to shooting. Like we got to make the friendship, because this friendship is going to be a little bit different from the other ones, so it
Right.
has to stand out a bit more. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it is very much his story as well, because like that like just based on his character and like who he is as a person and like his passion for the game, like he is going to go beyond this whole like neighborhood playing during the
Right.
summer. Like he's going to become something truly great, and I do know that just based on how his character's written and how he's played.
And speaking as to how his character is written, my favorite aspect of Benny is that as good as he is and as good as he knows that he is and as much praise as he gets from the other members like in the Sandlot, because they tell him it's a kind of a little chime they have for him is that you're the best, Benny, like you're the best player, whatever. It's great
Yeah,
that he still goes out of his way to include Smalls instead of like just letting it all go to his head and think that he's better than everyone. He loves the game so much he wants to bring others into it, and
right.
that is just such a wholesome character design, I think, for him, and big part of like why the movie hits you in the heart, because it's just like you can't help this guy that maybe other movies would portray a person with his skill and talent as like maybe being
Cocky,
egotistical or
arrogant.
cocky. He
Yeah.
just wants everyone to have fun and doesn't put himself above anybody else. So which you just that's why I love his character so much.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, you know what? I think I actually was asking because like Owen and some of our friends are in this like they're doing this like volleyball, and I know this is different from baseball, but they're in this like volleyball
Right.
class on Saturday mornings, and they're talking about how like the coach is like one of those people that is feels like, or they said like comes off like more angry and like not kind of he's not really encouraging. Like I was asking like, does that kind of like coaching work for some people where it's like tell me how to be better, like instruct me on how to be better rather than being like yelling at me for doing it wrong, that
Right.
kind of thing. And they basically like for them that doesn't work, right? So
Hard to imagine it would.
right, so watching a movie like this where you could easily have someone like if someone clearly isn't good and you're like you could have a character that's kind of a bully, like, well, you can't play with us, you suck.
Right.
But to actually have someone, and I think a lot of kids around that age hopefully had a friend like this or knew someone like this, where it's like, no, like, dude, like, play with us, you'll get better. Like,
Exactly.
I think
Encourage.
that kind of encouragement is good for kids, and I'm like glad that you do have that in this film. They actually have someone that it's like, hey, you're not as good as me, but you can get better, and like,
Exactly. And you're still
it's all
welcome
about
to come play.
play with us. Yeah, so I love that. That's how they write him. I mean, the other friends, it's cool that they don't have to be like him. I mean, of course, like
They're different. Yeah.
more like comic foils, if you will. But it's fine. You know, it's
Yeah,
every type of child is represented in this
very
movie, I
much
think.
so. And you got 9 of them to draw on, so you definitely
Yeah,
hit all these different personality traits.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
And you know
awesome.
what's cool? And like, you know, you sometimes run into this problem with kids in movies where they don't feel like kids. Like it's like you can tell they're acting or like something like that. But with this, like
Not
they
here.
felt not at all. They felt like genuine, real kids that you would know.
Yeah.
And they don't come off as actors. I think like I don't know like much about like how the casting process or stuff went down for this, but like they picked very well putting
Hmm.
this cast together, and you can just tell like when you're watching it, like just all feels very authentic.
Very much. I'd say like praise be to Patrick Renna, who plays Ham, the catcher, for those who might not recognize the actor's name. He, I think, does one of the better jobs of just coming off authentically as a baseball enthusiast kid. The way, like, the scene in particular where that rival team shows up to the
Oh,
Sandlot and they're having their little standoff, and
yeah,
Ham's like, "You play ball like a girl." And it's just like the biggest insult like that could ever be thrown to somebody, and that whole ensuing scene them playing at that other field is just like so awesome. And you're right, just like definitely like lends the authenticity of them just acting like how kids would back then.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think they really captured like what it is like to be a child in that environment, and
Yes.
like in those kind of situations, because you know you razz each other,
Yep.
you razz. It's all like coming from a place of like we're having fun, but also
Right.
it's also a competition too, right? So like I yeah, it's just they draw very authentically from how I would you would expect like children to act like in a set situation like that. And interesting too, like what I love too is like this is set in 1962, but this is all so universal that it doesn't really matter
It
when it's set.
could be set
Like
whenever.
it could be set totally whenever. And it's still like yeah, you're like I feel that, I understand it, been through it. It just takes you all the way back to like being in that position. And a lot of movies can't say that. I mean, that's like the power in that movie. I think that it can really transport you in a really real way.
Absolutely.
That doesn't get old.
Sadly enough, I wonder like if if when a movie is made, a coming of age movie that is made about today's youth,
Oh
I
God.
can't help but wonder what the focus will be. What is that uniting thing that is going to, obviously you'll have communities and stuff where sports are still a big thing, but it just seems like way that kids interact in the time period a when this movie is set and when it was filmed was still close enough, even though 30 it's a 30-year difference. We have come so much, we've strayed so far in the last 30 years between when the movie was made and where we're at today. I don't know that a movie like this would be as poignant. I mean, I'll leave it up to a filmmaker to do that, but I don't know what. I don't know that you could recreate this sort of
Well,
movie.
I was trying to think in recent years, has there really been a movie like this that has not recently? I can't think
I,
of like
the only thing that would even come close, and it's not by any means the same kind of movie, but in terms of like the kids dynamic, would be like the remake. You know what I mean? Still very
right.
different, but like they do the kid stuff well. But as like a coming of age kids movie, anytime recently, like nothing comes to mind.
Yeah, nothing comes to mind, and I have to go all the way back to like I haven't watched it in so long, but I do remember liking it. Hardball with Keanu Reeves.
That I've never seen.
It's actually pretty. It's like I think it might be Michael B. Jordan's first movie. He's a
Oh,
kid.
like acted it?
He's one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's one of the kids in it. It's another one that hits you in the feels from what I remember. But like, yeah, I can't think of like anything like remotely like this. I think if kids watched it as a today like, movie like this came out today, they'd be like, "We do that?" Like I'm usually at home, like
Well,
playing.
it's funny because I'll do this sometimes, especially a movie like this. I was like watching it and thinking like having this hypothetical viewing experience with my son that does not exist. But like if I were to have a son, which
Your
God
hypothetical
forbid,
son.
I'd like one, I would probably show him this movie when like he's that age. And I found myself being like, yeah, this is what life was like 70 or 80 years ago, because being depicted in the 60s. And I was like, wonder how radically different things will be if this will even be relevant at the time that whenever that happens. You know what I mean? It was I found myself finding myself like, how would I explain this scene? Or like they modern day kid like understand the nuances behind this or that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It was time will tell, I guess, but definitely like one sense it is a very universal movie. Yet, but there are definitely things that not limit it but restrict it, but is in a sense a product of its time as well.
yeah, I think so too. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go back on what you asked me about, talk about moments and stuff. The thing that
Yep.
still kind of hit me, uh, even like watching it yesterday, the way the movie wraps up, and like I don't know if it's just because like you've spent so much time with these characters and you've gotten to know them, and you're basically having fun with them, right? But
Yes,
those final moments where like it's like basically everyone's gonna go their separate ways, and it
yes, the
tells you
typical
like where
'90s
they,
ending.
yeah, where it tells you like where they all end up. That actually
Yes,
like still gets to me, where it's like, oh, this is like it's over, like
kind of broke my heart,
yeah,
honestly.
life as they kind of know it, like is in a good way. I mean, like some like they've gone on like different things to do different things, but like it's let's take you back to like when you were a kid, like there are these kind of events that you do grow apart sometimes. You go off and do other stuff. Maybe you move, like
Right?
there are certain things that you learn like middle school, high school. Like there's all these like transitional
Yeah,
periods where like you've been with these people for so many years, and then it's like, oh, like now we're growing up and now we're
things are
doing
different.
other stuff. Yeah, that hit me like pretty
It
much.
hit me
Always,
too.
yeah, it's
If
really
you
like
hadn't have
a
brought it up
poignant
here, I
moment.
was saving that to bring up for later because the ending, it's like I almost would have just rather them not bother because some of the storylines they wrap up nicely and you see like where Smalls and Benny end up going. Like he's an announcer
Yeah,
covering Benny's big moment in the major league game. So that is wholesome to see that they are still friends after all this time. But like part of you just wants just imagine that all the boys are still at the Sandlot playing ball together. You know what I mean? It's just sad to
yeah,
see like they grow up and they do their own thing and they grow apart. It's like I kind of wish we ended on the field. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So yeah, that
I
hit
do.
home.
I do love that Ham becomes a wrestler called the Great Ham. I like
that
like I'm like if
that is very fitting.
I was like I see that. I
Yeah,
It's definitely happening for him.
yeah.
But yeah, that moment like it's one that like the movie's over, and but then like you're watching like these characters like, oh fuck, like yeah,
Yeah, it's
like
sad. It's
the
that's very real life,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
myself thinking like, man, at one time there was a time where I was on the field for the last time with the boys, like back at this age, or like doing something with your friends when you're kids, and
yeah,
like thinking back to how far you've come. Some of these people I don't even see anymore that I would have had just as strong a bond with as I did when I was the age the kids are in the Sandlot. It's just it
yeah.
again back to universal. It's yeah, it very much hits home. But one thing I've been meaning to bring up that I wanted to see what your thoughts are if you get any vibes from these two movies. But I decided for myself when I was watching this that The Sandlot to me is an amalgamation between The Bad News Bears and Stand By Me. Like those are the two movies
Yeah,
that I
that's a solid
you think
comparison.
so. Yeah, they're
That's a solid comparison.
yeah,
Yeah,
very much. It
yeah.
felt like a combination of those two movies in a lot of regards, which I loved because I love
You
both those
know,
movies.
in regards to like coming of age movies, do you think The Sandlot is regarded in like a high way, the way that Stand By Me is? Like it are
I think it deserves to be, but I can't say that I see it get much mainstream recognition. Certainly not from like my circle, or I can't remember the last time I even had a conversation about it beyond like maybe some buddies I had growing up. Like everyone that around here, because there's a decent baseball culture in my town. So everyone that has played ball for years knows the Sandlot. You'd be hard pressed to find someone that doesn't know it. But beyond the baseball like cult, I
yeah.
can't say that I feel like Sandlot gets the recognition that it really does as a coming of age movie. But you find differently, or what do you think?
Yeah, ooh, I don't think it does on that level. I think it should though. I agree with you.
I think it deserves it.
And honestly, anyone listening to this, if you feel differently, like let us know because like
Please.
I'm not saying that it should be. I think it should. I don't really hear it named alongside Stand By Me in like
That's what I'm
in that
thinking
way.
too.
I think it resonates like just as powerfully as that movie does. I mean, I would put it there. I would say that easily stand up alongside it. But yeah, I don't really hear it mentioned. I mean, truly beloved movie. I mean, I'm not saying that, but like I think for like maybe casual, like I know a lot of casual moviegoers will mention Stand By Me. They've had like
Oh yeah,
some kind of connection to it.
it's fairly mainstream for sure.
Right, right. And I don't think every casual moviegoer necessarily I'll say they don't know about the Sandlot, but like it's
Right,
not they won't maybe don't view it in the same like regard.
exactly.
You know, I think they should.
Kind of like more of a niche movie. I mean, you said that it made decent money, and it probably definitely did, by the sounds of things, have a good home video life. But
Yeah,
again, like this, I mean, that's 30 years ago now, or 25, depending on how long that time would have lasted. But definitely doesn't I feel like it hasn't had that longevity that Stand By Me maybe
yeah,
has. And I think it's like me just ranking the two against each other. Like I still like I hold Stand By Me in a very high regard. I think it has
yeah.
an advantage of being more of an adult relatable
Adult, yeah,
movie. Like got heavier subject matter. The kids swear a lot more. Like there's just a more adult themes. So that could probably be a variable in that how it's held up. But
yeah.
no, if you like Stand By Me, I would say The Sandlot should be a necessary viewing.
I agree. You know, it's
Yeah.
interesting too because you brought up the whole point about like we brought up the whole point of are there movies like this being made right now? During this time period, though, we got a lot of movies that were made like this. Like
Yep.
I mean, they're not maybe not as highly regarded, but you got stuff like Little Big League, like Rookie of the Year, Angels in the Outfield, The Big Green. Like there were a lot of movies like this that were coming out that maybe try to capture like this kind of magic in a bottle that this movie did. And
Right.
like I love Angels in the Outfield. I don't think it's as good as like this, but like it is an interesting time where like I think more kids were doing stuff like that, which is why you had more movies being made about like kids being involved in sports, whether it be baseball,
Right.
basketball, football. Yeah, it's crazy that there were so many of these then and none really for them today. Unless
Yeah.
I'm missing stuff that's on Disney that I don't watch because I'm not in that demo. So
I mean, there could be, but I can't help but feel like this is definitely reminiscent of the time period. The '90s were, like you said, huge on kids sports movies, and not even
yeah,
kids, but like younger audience. Yeah, no, I don't feel like we're. Maybe there certainly are some, but I don't feel like it nearly to the capacity that they were in during this time period. It's crazy. Like once you just listed, there are plenty that I never got around to seeing too. Like this is definitely, and I think that goes to show how special the Sandlot is. Like it's definitely one that I'm glad I was able to see. Plenty of others I had not ever gotten around to experience, which sucks because I'm sure many of them hold up. But the Sandlot is just in a league of its own a little bit. You know what I mean?
oh, see what you did there, League of Their Own.
Yeah,
There you
you
go.
get it.
There
Nice.
you go. What are some other things you wanted to kind of point out about the film, or anything like you jotted down that you think we might have missed?
The thing that comes to mind is a dream that Benny has, and again, I love that it's Benny that has this dream where Abe Ruth comes to him and
Yeah, yeah,
basically like tells him, you got to do what you got to do. But the quote that he leaves him with, where he's like, "Remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Follow your heart, kid, and you'll never go wrong." That is like
yeah.
such like there couldn't have been a better written like quote for
A
a
movie.
message for this movie.
Yeah,
Like it just
message.
fits so well. I love it so much. It's so fitting for Benny's character. It's awesome that a baseball great is the one that comes to him in a dream and relays this to him.
Yeah.
Like it's just a very fitting moment that I wanted to highlight.
It's also a nice cherry on the top of like if it's funny. This is totally different, but we were talking about Renfield in the last episode we recorded, like the kind of like forced
Yeah.
messaging that goes on. There's ways to do
Right.
this where it works. This movie does have a
Flawless
message,
here.
but
Yeah.
it's not like we beat you over the head with it. And like
Right.
it's very seamless, and it's not like it's like a groundbreaking message, but it's still like one that works for the movie, and it certainly I don't find it
Intelligently written
cheesy.
things.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
I don't
exactly.
find it cheesy at all.
No
Like, yeah,
cheese.
that whatsoever. So like, there's ways to get that done without like being like, oh, here comes the message. Like,
Yeah. Another scene, actually, one that I gotta highlight, I'd say I'd probably put it up there as one of my favorites, is the scene where they all try the chewing tobacco. That
oh,
killed me. And to have had that adult, I would not have really known anything about what chewing tobacco was when I would have seen this as a kid.
yeah, yeah,
Now, obviously, having done it and it being such a big part of baseball culture and watching the reaction to it after they have tried it and they go on this ride at the fair. Oh my God. I was like just busting a gut laughing at it because that is so what it is like. I'd say like there's no way that they would have gone that long before they started yakking, but as someone that's been on that side of it, oh man, it hit home. It was very relatable.
so yeah. So I've never done chewing tobacco. I have a lot of friends
Hey,
that
you're not
do,
missing
and
anything, dude.
honestly, most of my friends that have done it are connected to baseball in some way. Every I used to have one friend
It's big in
that
hockey
dude.
too.
I was like, dude, like put your dip cup somewhere else. Like it's gross. And then one time at a party, my buddy was like doing it into like a Coors Light can, and it was next to other friends
I
Coors Light
know.
can. You know exactly where this is going, and
It's the
we all
universal experience.
and like I didn't, none of us tasted it or saw it, like tasted it, but like we all wanted to throw up watching him react to like, oh, like yeah, it was so.
Oh yeah, there's
Yeah,
nothing worse though than when it trigger because like done it enough. Like I never done it chronically, but just being especially like
yeah,
around high school and university playing sports, had plenty of buddies that did do it chronically. So I dip here and there, but I only ever threw up from it once, and let me tell you that is a horrible experience. So don't ever
yeah.
subject yourself to that. But I have
Please don't.
also I've seen this happen, and I've heard horror stories of people gulping down other people's dip spit, like chewing
Uh,
tobacco leftovers. I've had it touch my mouth because I took up a can and wasn't sure, but I never swallowed it, and I'm just very grateful. And I'm knocking on wood that that never happens because it is as bad as you would think that it is, and it's very disgusting. But that scene in the movie, yes, was quite hilarious, and I thought it was kind of like not risque. Definitely, the climate was a little bit different in the early '90s, but I love that they chose to include kids chewing nicotine. Basically, like, that was hilarious. I don't know if that would fly these days. Maybe in like
well, no, we got kids like
R.
we had kids ingesting cocaine in Cocaine Bear.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Of all the things that happen in that movie,
this is PG though. Sandlot.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. Like of all the things that happened in Cocaine Bear, I was most shocked by that.
That's a great point too, because usually I think it's kind of been coming around a lot lately. Maybe in like higher rated movies, like rated R or 18A, in terms of like what they'll let kids kind of address, but definitely it's coming around a little bit.
Yeah. God, that's hilarious. Yeah, that scene is really funny. But what I only have, like, I can't, like, I'm assuming that is what would happen if you doing that for the first time. And then...
Definitely. I think it would be more immediate than getting on that ride and then spewing. But funny, I like that they got the time. And it's funny because they have no idea what they're talking about, what it is. Like, it gives you energy. And, like, all the pros do it. And it was gulping. And, like, some of them are actually chewing it like it's bubble gum. And I'm like, oh my God.
It's
but apparently they used... Yeah,
well,
they used a combination of what was it? It was licorice and something else. I read what they used. It was on IMDb there, but thought that was pretty cool that they chose to include that. And I read this only a couple hours ago, but
I'm gonna see if I can find it. I'm like scrolling. Oh, after the kids. Oh God. Okay, well, I just got pumped. I just got to the part about the vomit. Sorry. It says after the kids chew tobacco, they all ill. The vomit used in the ride scene was made from split pea soup, baked beans, oatmeal, a little water, and some movie gel. They used paint guns to discharge it, and they actually nailed a few people in real life by accident. The chewing tobacco was made from beef jerky. Yeah, the chewing tobacco was made from beef jerky and licorice. Some of the actors also became sick filming the ride scene too. So that's also authentic. So good for
definitely. I'm a guy that gets motion sick from, I can do like fair rides and stuff. Like I'll do the Ferris wheel or something, but stuff like that, like the Gravitron and all these things.
I can't do the Grav. I can't do it. I did it once, and I was like, I felt like my life flashed before my eyes. I was like, this is like the closest to death I've ever gotten up to that point. I was like, no, I'm good.
I'm a motion sick guy, not roller coasters, but stuff like fair rides. I would not need chewing tobacco to be yakking on one of those. So that props to the kids that had to go through that.
Yeah. And I also wonder if the casting of James Earl Jones, because he was in Field of Dreams, which is like another big baseball movie. I wonder if right? I wonder if including him was that like an homage to like him being in that a little bit, like but yeah, I mean, I know kids wouldn't know that, but like adults seeing the movie would know it.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would have no idea. I wasn't even around then, but I couldn't help but feel that people would know him as Vader at that point. Like the kids even would be like, "Oh, yo, that's Darth Vader's voice right there." Like that, I can't help but feel like that would maybe be definitely parents, but that might maybe like led into him. I'm sure he was probably interested in being in it because Field of Dreams was probably like 4 or 5 years before.
Yeah,
this, right?
I saw it. Yeah, it came out in 1989, so 4 years earlier. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's I think James brings a great presence, even though it's late in the movie when he shows his face. It's
I mean he's a great presence in anything. The dude has like the most memorable movie voice, maybe Morgan Freeman too. They both have pretty but James Earl Jones. I mean the fact that this is Vader, this is Mufasa, this is the voice of CNN.
I couldn't think of that either. Yes, that's right. That would have been the next year.
Yeah. So it's like crazy. I mean, he's the king. He's the king in Coming to America. I mean, come on, this is like amazing.
That's right.
We were talking about James Earl Jones over the weekend because we brought up Coming to America, and it has one of my favorite lines in that movie, where they realize that he's like not doing what he's supposed to be doing, and that he's slumming it by living in this new location, not living up to his like princely duties. And the guy's like, oh yeah, he's like working at like McDowell's, which is like McDonald's basically in the movie. And James Earl Jones just like so defiantly, he's like, my son works. Like it's just so mad. it's like, and the delivery of it is like so great that
I can only imagine.
Yeah, that's a movie that if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check out Coming to America. It's like probably one of the funniest Eddie Murphy movies. Yeah. Sorry about that little. It wasn't really a tangent. It was James Earl Jones adjacent.
Yeah, he's like That's what I was gonna ask. I'm pretty sure that he's deceased now, is he not?
No,
He
he's
seemed
still
to
alive.
him
He's
he's
still
still
alive.
like then
He
he
was
was
just in.
January 17th.
Yeah, I think the
He was
last thing
what?
that he was in was Coming to America, the sequel. That was the last thing he appeared in. Not a big part,
Oh, he
but
wasn't. Oh my god.
yeah, but yeah.
He was
And,
born
and
in
he's
1931.
yeah, and he's still
That is
doing. He's still
insane.
providing. I know he did some of the voicing for Vader on Obi-Wan, so he's still. I mean, I guess like what he can do is he can still do the voice work. He doesn't have to go anywhere for that. So, because he is up there and
Wow.
he is up there in age, but like, yeah, yeah, good for him.
Yeah, I'm
And I
seeing
mean,
this now, and it's yeah,
that's gonna be a sad one.
that is gonna be a
I
sad
guess
one.
how
Damn.
him and Morgan Freeman. I feel like I might like I'm like losing my actual grandparents or something. I'm like I don't know what I'll do.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gonna be. I've been saying this for years now with my buddies. Like we're approaching this few years here of some major iconic, celebrity deaths. It's gonna
yeah,
be very sad, but
very
I
sad.
cannot believe that he's still alive. I thought for some reason I'd seen that he had passed, but glad to see that he's
Yeah,
still
no,
around because
don't put that
he was
bad
great.
juju out there, man.
No, that's right. That's right. Thank
uh,
you, James.
all right, so The
Yeah.
Sandlot, as we know, opened on April 7th, 1993. It came out the same year as Rookie of the Year, which is funny. I just brought that movie up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually, for a movie, it only grossed $4 million in its opening weekend and made $32 million total by the end of its run. So that means it at least had decent word of mouth to start that low and then carry on
Yeah.
to like $32 million. And figures for the worldwide VHS and DVD sales are estimated to be at $76 million since its release. And I'm sure that number has probably gone up even more because uh, there's like a Blu-ray came out in 2018 as part of the film's 25th anniversary. So there's like a bunch of editions of the movie out now, and I'm
That's
sure it's
awesome.
killed it even more since then. As a 64% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, that seems too low. It's still fresh, but that seems too
Yeah.
low.
It's nice that it's
Uh,
fresh.
since it says it may be shamelessly derivative and overly nostalgic, but The Sandlot is nevertheless a genuinely sweet and funny coming of age adventure. Cinema Score opening day audiences gave it a B plus. I
Okay.
feel like that's
That's
fine.
respectable.
Roger Ebert gave the film 3 stars, comparing the film to a summertime version of A Christmas Story, based on the tone and narration of both films. Uh, Entertainment Weekly gave it a B plus, praised its simplicity and strong fundamentals. Variety gave it a mostly negative review, praised the cinematography and score, but felt the baseball team did not come together, and that the film, while sincere, was remarkably shallow. Wow.
Oh my god! What the more I hear about Variety, I'm like, oh my god, they're so. I don't know how I feel about their approach, but whatever. Fair enough.
There was also a defamation suit in 1988 made by Michael Polydouris. I don't know. Well, he sued 20th Century Fox and the producers of the film for defamation. He said he was a childhood classmate of director David E. Evans, and he claimed that the character of Squints was derogatory and caused him shame and humiliation. Because I think he was trying to say that the character was based on him. Uh,
Okay.
the trial court found in favor of the filmmakers, and that finding was affirmed by the California Court of Appeal. After initially agreeing to review the case in 1998, the Supreme Court of California reversed its decision, dismissing the review and reinstating the Court of Appeal's opinion in favor of 20th Century Fox.
I'm glad to hear it.
And there is a sequel and a prequel. The Sandlot 2 came out in 2005, a direct-to-video sequel in which a
Mm-hmm.
new Sandlot gang is featured. The only returning cast member is James Earl Jones as Mr. Myrtle. Evans also returned to direct the sequel and voice Small's younger brother, Johnny. And then The Sandlot Heading Home came out in 2007, another direct-to-video sequel starring Luke Perry as Tommy Santa Santarelli, who gets knocked back to 1976 from 2005 and relives his childhood.
Okay.
Uh, John C. Leopardi reprises his role as Squints in that film. As of
Interesting.
2019, a TV series with the original cast was in the works of Disney Plus. I remember them talking about it, but
Whoa.
it never came to fruition. So I still hope that maybe that might be in the works because that'd
I
be
was
pretty cool.
thinking it would be pretty. I mean, I say this yet if I felt like if I saw any other kind of properties approach this, I would say I would hate it. But I
Yeah,
think it'd be cool to have as many as the original cast as you can come back and like kind of have a Sandlot with their kids and
with
like
their kids.
kind
Yeah,
of poke fun in the modern generation and how like out of touch they are with that stuff and maybe teach their kids how to play baseball or something. That would be
yep,
pretty cool.
yep.
Just because I have a son
I'd
of
be on
mine.
board with that. I would be on board with that. I
I
think
feel
it'd be
like
kind
if,
of cool.
of course, now speculative. I'm sure if that was done, it would just be a shameless money grab. But if there was
Yeah.
some heart to it, like the original Sandlot has, I would be all aboard that. Maybe that'd be something. Maybe we'll see. I
Yep.
feel like I saw the sequel because it came out in 2005. I would have been like 7. And I knew at least when I was watching it today that there was a sequel. I just don't remember anything about it, but I think I have seen it.
I
Have you
haven't.
about
I
it?
have
No?
not seen it. No, I
Or the
you know I
prequel?
kind of was. I was aware of the Sandlot too. I actually did not know about the Sandlot heading home. I did not know
I
about
didn't
the
know about
prequel
the prequel. No.
until jotting down notes. I was like, oh, cool. Well, I'll bring it
Yeah.
up
Cool.
if
Yeah.
anyone wants to check out those sequels. But you know what? They're not going to be as good as this 1993 classic.
It's a great standalone.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything you want to kind of part
We hit
on as far
everything
as?
that I
I think we did.
had jotted down. Yeah,
Right.
I mean it's a very tight movie, it doesn't demand a whole lot. It was just a really nice nostalgic rewatch, one that I'm glad that we took the time to appreciate because it had been so long and I don't know when I would have taken the time to see this again, truth be told.
Yeah.
So very glad that we dedicated an episode to the Sandlot.
Yeah,
But
I'm glad we did too, and I'm glad this one. I know with some anniversary episodes we kind of plot by plot kind of break things down or like that kind of thing. I think this
right,
one is just more about the feeling of it,
very much so.
and that is the power of this movie. I think it really makes you feel like if that's the point to make you feel like a kid again, it does that. With
Certainly.
flying fucking colors, it's like it really is. I can't think of anything I don't like about it.
I'm with you.
I think nostalgia makes me want to give it a 10 because I just love it so much. I know it's not like a no, it's not like a perfect 10 movie, but no, it just based
Right.
on how it makes me feel and like feel good afterwards.
Yes.
I'll stand by that. I will love the movie so much, and it's been such a huge part of my life since it came out. I'm pretty cool with like throwing its in
I,
its way.
I'm not gonna take that away from you, dude. Again, like rate it in a different sort of way because it's obviously it's not like a 10 cinematic for what you get out of it and what the movie is trying to do. It does it perfectly, so it's hard to say
Right.
that it's not a 10. So it's a different sort of rating system, but 10 out of
Yep.
10 enjoyment. It was great to go back and watch, and I definitely recommend. I'd say it's a home run for sure, a grand
Oh,
slam maybe. I
this is your third one. Your third one. League of Their Own,
know.
home run, grand
Yeah.
slam.
Who's
you're
keeping
on
track of it?
you're on
Yeah.
you're on fire today.
Well,
Yeah. Well, I'm hopefully, you've got, I mean, I think everyone continues to revisit the film, and I think even 30 years from now, it'll probably still be something that people talk about, and
classic.
it's a very much a timeless classic. And I love that so many people keep discovering it. I would love if like more younger people discovered it and
Mhm.
maybe like get back on the time where like you went outside and like play with your friends instead of just sitting at home
There's
playing
a
video
lot
games.
they could learn from it for
Yeah, there's a
sure.
lot to learn here. Like honestly, some parents like show this movie to your kids. Like if you grew up with it, like
Yeah,
maybe
that's on
maybe
us now.
yeah, maybe watching it together with will be like a kind of experience instead of like there is a joy in discovering it on your own, but like I think like that's the kind of movie you could share with your family. Like look, this is what kids used to do.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you know,
Try
you
it
know
out.
before the TikTok and all
Uh,
that.
and unfortunately, I have a feeling that we're just heading in the opposite side, like in a different
Yeah,
direction. Where next thing you know, it'll virtual reality will be all the craze, and we'll
yeah,
get farther and farther from outside. Exactly. Who knows what's next? But
yeah,
while we can, I would definitely be showing this, and hopefully it can inspire this and the next generation to get outside and hit some baseballs around because there's nothing
yeah,
like it. It's a timeless classic movie and pastime. Baseball is king. It is a fantastic sport and a fantastic pastime. And
yep,
this movie encapsulates that, I'd say, beautifully.
yep. I agree. Well, thank you for reliving this movie. For its 30th anniversary, it was fun.
Pleasure was
I
all
liked
mine.
hearing it from your perspective of like growing up playing baseball. I'm glad it just wasn't just two guys who never experienced this, like talking about it.
Right.
That really helps out a lot. And good pick from you. I know I put it on the list, but you were like, "Yo, I want to do this one." So like,
Yes, I'm glad
uh,
that you had highlighted it because
yeah,
I don't
this is a
know
fun
that I
one.
would have. Yeah, it was a fun one, and I probably would have overlooked it. And so I'm glad that you'd had it on there because it was very fun. And
Yep,
it's always a pleasure doing an anniversary episode. I look forward to these, and I'm sure we will have some other juicy ones coming up for any listeners that are still here because
yep,
we have
yep.
like we said, there's a lot of great movies with some milestones this year, and hope they're all as fun as The Sandlot.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how. Like, yeah, I hope all of our revisits are just as fun.
Yes, it's nice.
Sometimes time removed, you're like, oh, no, that's
Yeah,
not quite how I remembered it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm still waiting for something like that to happen because so far I've really enjoyed all our anniversary watches.
yeah.
This one particularly so. So
You're
I
like,
always think
t-
the dynamic
like,
will be
like 10 years
cool.
ago, this movie was fire. What happened?
I don't know. Hey, time is not always a good thing, but
Yeah,
in the case of the Sandlot, 30 years have done well. So yeah,
yeah.
it was a great watch.
Still stands up, my friends. All right, Jackson,
Yes. Well,
send this on out.
By now, you guys know the drill. Just another reminder, we are fast approaching episode 100, so stay tuned for that. We'll be counting down episode 100. We're now at 90. So thank you for everyone that is along for the ride so far, whether you started back at episode 1 or you're just hopping on now at episode 90. We still have a lot of awesome content coming your guys' way. So you know the drill by now. You can find us wherever you guys can listen to a podcast. We are on all social medias as well at Back to the Blockbuster, and stay tuned for another deep dive coming at you guys shortly. Gaius, as always a pleasure, my friend, and I will link up with you next week to chat about movie news. Looking forward to it, my friend.
Sounds good, buddy.
Peace out, guys.